I'm gonna share.
Okay, we are officially recording. If you are watching this on the YouTubes, you can just fast forward probably a good minute. I'm going to go on live on Facebook now, and actually I'm going to close my door because my little wee birdies.
Let me go on yours.
Yeah, so I'm going to live stream it right now. Boundaries. Here's what you can do today. Okay, I'm gonna go live. So it'll take a second because for some reason it comes up on, even though I set it up correctly, apparently I didn't, because it'll go live on my Facebook feed, but then I have to change it from like locked to public. So you won't see it quite yet. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so I just have to change. Let me just find it on my wall. So it is officially live. Hello, hello. It is officially live, but it won't show up until I change the privacy to privacy. Edit audience. Okay. Public. Let's go public. Let's go public. Okay.
Still don't.
And I'm going to do a comment. Yay, we are live.
There you go.
Okay, so you should try to tag you, buddy. Every time I go to write your name, it's like highlights pink for when it's like rad. I'm like, yeah, she's pretty rad.
It highlights what?
Okay. So it should be live for you now.
I think I have it on mine now. Yeah, I have it.
Yes? Okay, cool. Fabsies. Okay, I can now take my sticker. This is how I write. Record. Amazing. Hello, everybody on this lovely Wednesday. I don't know about you, but I woke up this morning feeling a hella lighter than I did last week and the last couple of days. So if you have been feeling heavy, I mean, I like to say it's all in you, but also sometimes there's some stuff going on out there.
Totally.
Stuff going on out there. So if that was you, I see you. Radiance, we see you. We understand. So if you don't know me, I'm Leanna Jane Lewis. I'm a transformational coach for visionaries ready to play a bigger game, which means we get all your insides all sorted, organized, and ready to go so that you can actually follow through, stop avoiding shit, and show up. And so that's, so that's a little bit about me. Radiance, you want to just give us the 411 on your beautiful self?
Yes. So thank you again for having me here. My name is Radiance, and I am a Reiki master and spiritual coach. What I specialize in is helping women and non-binary women overcome emotional blocks, heal generational cycles, so they can access their spiritual gifts and live a life on purpose. Currently launching my Underground Road Reiki Practitioner program, which helps you get certified in Reiki, but also helps you embody your true spiritual leader and power. So yes, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm super thrilled. I'm super thrilled. Like I said before, I was like fangirling. You're like, oh my gosh, it sounds amazing. So also to definitely Radiance, put the link for people to check out your program, because it is super fantastic. And just even chatting with you a couple of weeks ago about it, I was like, this is so much more than just a Reiki certification. This is like everything that you could need or desire, or some of the things you don't even know you need until you get them and you're like, oh. So yeah, super, super excited. So last week so I'll also put the link for last week's chat in the comments below when we're done. Last week, we sort of covered a little bit of the lay of the land when it comes to boundaries, like really, what are they? And more about the general teaching of it, and just some, what I like to call thought seeds, like, hey, why don't you think about it this way? And just, I think we kind of gave like little invitations of, here's really what boundaries are really about. And so today we're going to give you really tangible takeaways. I'm going to give you some exact scripts that you can use, because I don't know about you, but when I get into like what I call a muddle between, say, myself and somebody else, like either my children or my partner, and it's about a boundary, sometimes I'm so in a reaction that I kind of forget to follow a script, or I forget to like bring myself in a little bit. And so I found personally, and with clients, that these scripts are really helpful. So I'm going to give some of those today as well. And I know Radiance and I kind of chatted a little bit before we started around what we're going to share. So I'm super excited to dive in. So I have a few things to share, but Radiance, I was just curious, did you want to start with some of the things you were talking about before we, like, what feels right for you?
Sure. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
one of the things that I was looking at, how can we approach boundaries in a way that feels good for us, but also doesn't necessarily step on too many toes, but also takes in consideration, like, hey, I am still honoring myself. And one of the ways that I know that I have to make sure when I am enforcing my boundaries in a healthy way is really being attuned to my body, learning how my body feels in certain situations. And what do I mean by that? You've experienced, I'm sure, when you walk into a room and you feel like, hey, your body kind of feels like this contraction where you're just feeling almost like you're right here with your vibe. You're feeling good. You're feeling elevated. You're feeling happy, confidence, you just started your day or that time off with a bang. And then all of a sudden you walk into a situation or you have a communication, whether that be with your partner or, with someone new. And next, all of a sudden you just feel like everything is just going lower. You're starting to feel your body tense up. Well, it's really important for you in those situations to really be attuned to what your body feels like. Really start getting aware of what your hands feel like, what your arms feel like, what your toes feel like, what your stomach feels like, all of that, because your body is going to tell you how you're feeling triggered by certain things. It keeps score of maybe some past traumatic experiences that you've had. And the next thing you know, it starts to, those nerve impulses start to, sync up. And then all of a sudden those old instincts start to creep up. And you may not even realize that it's because of something old that happened. It's just that now your body is telling you to protect yourself. That's really what the body is meant to do. It's meant to protect yourself. And one of the things that I was reading in Judith Orloff's book, she was saying, there's a big concentration of love in the spiritual community, life coaching, what have you. It's always like lovingly enforce boundaries, but you can only lovingly enforce boundaries when you feel safe enough to do so.
Yeah.
And you will only feel safe when your body is telling you that you feel safe. So being attuned to your body would be a very, very good way to start off with understanding how to enforce those boundaries.
Yeah.
And then when you do that, you'll start to see like, hey, maybe I was just being triggered by something that happened in the past. And that's causing some old instinct to keep myself safe to bubble up to the surface. Really get attuned to that. And that will help you understand, okay, is this person really trying to come into my space and make me feel unsafe? Or is my body recognizing this particular instance as something that happened in the past that is now trying to keep me safe again? Because your body is keeping score of all of these old memories, all of these past traumatic experiences. This is something energetically that I call and teach my clients called the basic grid of our body. So we have something called a basic grid. We also have chakras that are taking in information from the environment and then putting out information into the environment as well. So we have chakras that do that. But we also have something called the basic grid. Now, the basic grid is what something like if we were to actually put an example of what the basic grid is. The cement around a building, for example. That would be the chakras. That's the one that's taking in maybe the rain and, kind of dealing with that. Maybe it kind of gets a little bit rusty on the outside and then starts to penetrate into the inside. That would be more of what the chakras are. But if we talk about the basic grid, that's the steel fortress. That's the framework. That's what's holding up all of those things. And that's what's also going to take in that brute force, that traumatic experience, and it's going to maintain that force field as long as it can until it breaks down. So that's what that basic grid is. So it's really important that you realize, hey, I need to start freeing up some energy in my basic grid. Maybe I need to explain that a little bit better. Maybe I need to start moving energy more in my body. So that way it's no longer harboring that trauma that's causing me to be triggered and have that old instinct and then trigger that fight or flight response when really there's no danger, but I'm perceiving it and my body is perceiving it. So I'm unconsciously reacting in a way to once again protect myself.
Yes, it's like the difference between the steel framework just holding up a building, enjoying like I'm the thing that holds the building versus I'm the thing that protects the building. It's constantly like, it sounds like it's being able to kind of put down your armor and your sword for a little bit. Because there's a trust in the body, there's a trust in the flow of that the energy can move because it's not building up and building up and building up.
Right. And that's a really great point because the buildup, and that brings another point, the buildup, like that threshold of what my boundaries are, how can that be taken in consideration? Because often if you don't have a boundary, like a clear, like this is the line, don't cross this, what happens is there's a buildup, right? There's a threshold. Like maybe now, because you've never really enforced that boundary, because you've never really developed like my clear yeses and clear nos. Now you have built up like, okay, I can take this, I can take this, I can take this, I can take this. But eventually we all have a tipping point. We all do, every single person. So when you get to that tipping point, all of a sudden, now there's an explosion. Now there's like, I'm going to, blah, 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 blah. I don't like this. I don't like when you leave your hair in the sink. I don't like when you put your sandwiches in the refrigerator without putting something on the cover. I don't like when, like all of like the little things, all of a sudden there's an explosion. And then it's because you've reached that tipping point because the threshold for your boundaries, it's too high. So then
way too high. It's way too high. My husband and I call that, well, I wouldn't say it's our term, but it's a term that we both learned and use as like, we have withholds.
Withholds,
Right. And it's like, we've gone 2 or 3 days or longer withholding something that we needed to actually communicate. For whatever reason, we didn't communicate it. And it's like, we didn't get it through our body. We didn't get it out of our body and into where it needs to go. So it can be received and alchemized. And so then you have a buildup of withholds. And what that actually looks like is yelling about something that on an ordinary day when you are aligned, you wouldn't yell about.
Right.
Like, is it really a big deal that there's hair in the sink? I mean, yeah, it can. Sometimes it gets in the way of plumbing, but like, is it, or 10 years from now, is it going to really matter?
No. But in that moment, it mattered a whole lot.
Yeah, right. It did.
It's like I had to say it. Oh man, I get that so much.
Yeah, but that's it. It's like, it's that threshold, right? And so because we were sort of talking right before too, I feel like this is kind of a little dovetail to it, where on one side of this pendulum, you're kind of, you're giving in, you're giving over, you're self-betraying, you're withholding, the part of the story is like, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. This is uncomfortable, but it's easier for me to hold this discomfort than try to put it out in the world and have to like have confrontation, whatever the story is, here you are holding it. And then of course you hit that threshold where you can no longer hold it in. So you swing right over to the side. And that's where it looks like that. Sorry, not sorry. Screw you. Like, don't mess with me. I will cancel you. Like,
Oh my gosh. Like, especially like cancel culture. Like as soon as you said that, I just started thinking of cancel culture.
Oh, I know.
It's like, I know that this hasn't like nothing much to do with what you said, but like with cancel culture, I feel like that's just a complete, like the pendulum of always having, like before, like 20, 30 years ago, of so many things that kind of just let slide, and like people that got their feelings hurt, or, maybe people that really weren't given the opportunities that they were supposed to be given. And then now it's like, as soon as you make one mistake, your whole life is like, boom, like you're not just allowed to have any type of like, can I just get a hello, like can we talk about it? There's nothing. Like, so
and so what I'm hearing though is like how to not necessarily swing from one side to the other, because that's not holding a boundary. That's not what boundaries are about. Boundaries are about existing and finding that place in the middle where you have give, right? You have some give, and at the same time, you're not way over on this side coming from a place of anger. Where boundaries, like when we come from a place of anger to try and change something, it can help with small things. So I was giving this example actually to a client this morning. I'm like, listen, getting so pissed off at yourself and so pissed off at the world to induce a change can help in certain areas, right? Excuse me. For example, I have birds. They like to sit on our window. And of course, there's poo there. And I've stared at it for the last 3 days, getting so annoyed with it that eventually I'm going to clean it. And that's maybe a great way to motivate yourself, is to get pissed off enough. But if you're coming from that place to try and, if that's where your boundaries are being created from, that's not necessarily going to help all the time in all the ways. And it's not necessarily going to be sustainable, right? That's not necessarily moving energy. That's just like out of your body. That's just saying, okay, I'm going to move it from my heart down to, whatever, my shoulder. You're just moving it in a different place in your body, to a place of anger and frustration. So it's not really going to serve you. It's that middle ground. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And really, it's going to give you this false sense of confidence too. When you're like, hey, I'm angry and now I can finally express myself. And now the anger is what's fueling you. And anger fueling your ability to say your boundary is not really going to solve anything. It's going to create more problems. It's going to, emotionally charged conversations usually create more emotionally charged problems. And we're looking for results and solutions, not problems. So then that creates more of a cycle of you having to get angry in order for you to really enforce any boundary. And then next thing you know, it's like, okay, well, you're constantly in this adrenaline rush. You're constantly activating your nervous system in a way where you're getting a more highly charged stress response in your body. And now you're actually weakening your immune system. So it can actually cause more problems, both biologically and with your personal relationships, than actual solutions. And once again, healthy boundaries.
Yeah, nailed it. And it's like, it's that charge, right? So you have to know when you're charged and when you're neutral. And when you're disassociated. Those are kind of like the 3 places you want to kind of notice you are. And if I was just to really simplify it, when you're making boundaries, it's going to come from one of those 3 places where you're charged, you're reactive, you're self-led, you're more neutral, or you're so disassociated, you've exited so much that the boundary is not really going to help you over here, and it's not going to help you over here, because you're just going to keep the same pattern. I'm exiting, I'm avoiding, I'm hiding, I'm Netflixing and binging, or I'm like hyper vigilant, hyper reactive, hyper charged. And so let's find the middle ground. So I'm going to give some tips on that, but I don't want to like round you off, Radiance, before do you feel complete there? Like,
I feel like we're going in this natural,
cool.
So,
awesome. Okay, so I'll ping off your pong or pong off your ping. So I've thought a lot about this. I thought a lot about boundaries, especially in the last, couple weeks when we started talking about doing this. And I really, really thought about it because I want to make it like really tangible. So the first thing is just kind of from last week. Boundaries are here to help hold equality in your life. They're here to help hold equality. The way that you experience that quality is through relationship. It's through relating. It's through relationship with the people around you in all kinds of ways, whether that's social media, whether that's my neighbors, whether that's my partner, whatever it is. It's the people that are out that you live with in this world. And then it's also the quality of the experience you have with the different parts of yourself, the different aspects of who you are, the different facets of you, the inner critic part of you, the one that wants to get it right, the one that's the vulnerable parts of yourself, the ones that are so tender and so hidden because we don't want them to get triggered. And so you have relationship with yourself, and that for sure is one of the most important places that you need to go to create a boundary. Because if we can't hold a boundary with ourselves, with the various aspects of who we are, it's going to show up in the way that we try to hold a boundary outside of ourselves. So I can give you all the tips and tricks on how to hold a boundary with your partner or your children. I've got loads and years of experience to do that. I can like super nanny the heck out of you if you really want to. And it has to start from inside yourself. So I'm going to start there, and I'm going to make it really super simple. And as brief and condensed as I possibly can. And just know that I'm also going to be doing different lives and different bits of content and things like that to kind of unfold this a little bit more and unpack it. So when I talk about parts, I'm making reference to the work of Richard Schwartz. So I know that different people have different ideas of what parts work is. But I'm making reference to something called internal family systems, which is not about the family. So I'm not going to give you the whole one-on-one about what it is. All you need to know is that you have various parts of yourself. And for the most part, you have 3 different parts. You have parts that want to manage you all the time. They want to manage your choices, your behaviors, they're front and center. You see them on the daily. And then you also have what are called firefighters, and they're the ones that are managing your, they don't want you to feel the depth of emotion that you could possibly feel. They don't want you to go down the black hole. They don't want to open Pandora's box. They don't want you to lose yourself with an emotion. Oh, and I've just lost Radiance, but she'll be back. They don't want to, they don't want you to lose yourself. Okay. And they're the ones that will show up like addictions or hypervigilance or overworking, overcompensating. And so they're the ones that they don't really care about any problems that that may result in some choices. They just want to get you out, come hell or high water. And then you have the very, very vulnerable parts of yourself, the ones that you are, whether you're conscious of it or not, are deeply trying to protect. When you talk about boundaries, when you're trying to set a boundary, really at the core, at the very, very heart of it, these are the parts of yourself that you're actually motivated to protect. So the more that you can take care of those parts of you that have been kind of exiled away because you don't want them to get hurt, they're very, very young and vulnerable, the more that you can help them and help heal. When we talk about healing, that's the healing that needs to happen. The more that you can, what Richard Schwartz calls, unburden them and release the grip of the life experience that they're carrying in their bodies, the more you can do that. Not only is it easier to hold boundaries, but the more that you feel like the less you feel like boundaries have to protect you. And now boundaries can actually help uplift and support you. So that's just a little bit what I wanted to share there. And the reason I wanted to share that is because boundaries are like, I want you to think of it like, it's not a gate to keep out the world. Okay. Rather, boundaries are the space that exists between you, the isness of you, the self you, the unwavering you, the God manifest you, and the different aspects of who you are, the different parts of yourself. So let's look at one part that we all have, which is an inner critic, the one that's like criticizing you because it wants you to get it right, right? All parts are motivated to try and help. They're all good and they all have really good intentions. Okay. And if you don't think that's true, that's just a part of you that's like, no, that can't be true. But the truth is all parts of you are trying to help you. That's how your inner system is created. Let's get Radiance back on here. Let's get her back on here. We lost her. We don't want to lose her. Yay. Okay. She's back. Yay. Okay, she's back. I'm going to just let her get back in here. Hopefully she sticks around. Let's cross her fingers. Okay, so as I was saying, like boundaries are the space between you, the isness of you, the self you, and the parts of yourself. Okay, and the parts of yourself. So let's just take a look at the inner critic. So the inner critic is, we all have an inner critic, the part of us that wants us to get it right, the part of us that wants us to get it right. Okay. What can happen is if we kind of try to ignore and push away, which sometimes this, by the way, is what mindset can try to do. It tries this erasure process. Mindset has to be used at a certain time in a certain way. And I'll get into that. So, oh, we lost her again. Okay. So boundaries, sorry. Radiance is here and then she's not here and then she's here and then she's not here. So I'm just trying to keep my train of thought here. I have a part that's like, come on, Leanna, you got this. You can remember. So I was talking about the inner critic, the space in between, and the self view. Okay. So here's your takeaway. Here's what I want you to know. The most important boundary that you get to have inside your system is the relationship that you have with the parts of yourself. And what this looks like in a tangible way is, here's what I want you to do. I want you to notice. It's only one thing. It's going to help you create boundaries and hold them and stick to them. Trust me. Okay. I want you to just get curious and notice the way that you feel toward a part of yourself. In this case, your inner critic. So think about your inner critic and just like feel into that. And how do you feel towards your inner critic? And here's where the boundary comes in. What we don't want to happen is we don't want a part of us that hates the inner critic, that's annoyed with it, that's frustrated with it, that feels hopeless that it's there, that just wants to ignore it. Those are all parts of yourself. That's learned behavior. Okay. I have them, you have them, but it's not actually the isness of you. That's a part of you. And if you feel that way toward that inner critic, okay, for all my visual people, let's say your inner critic is right here. And then I ask you how you feel toward it. And you're like, I am annoyed with it. That's not you. That's another part. And so what you want to do is you want to create healthy space between you, the self you, and the part that you want to work with, right? The aspect of yourself that you're curious about. And so when you have that healthy connection and space, by the way, and you keep moving apart all those other parts that judge it, that are annoyed with it, now you've created a healthy distance and space between you and the part of yourself that you want to help hold and heal. Okay, let's give this a go again. Come on, Radiance. Fingers crossed. Third time's a charm? Third time's a charm? Okay.
Hey.
Okay. What do you think? Is it going to work? I can see you. You're looking clear. You're looking clear. You're looking clear. Oh, I can hear myself. Look at this gal, getting her all sorted. Okay, so while Radiance gets ready, so that's step number one, is you need space. What can happen? What can happen is you have parts of yourself that could try so hard to just take you over. And what happens and how this looks like is you start saying things like, that's just who I am. It's just who I am. Oh, I'm just self-critical. It's just who I am. Mm-hmm. And that means that a part of you has tried to take over you so much, and there is no boundary or space between the truth of who you are, the God manifests you, and the aspect of yourself, the learned behavior of yourself, the any wounding of yourself. And so we can't help without healthy space between us and the thing or the person that we're trying to help. There has to be some space. So that's a boundary that you need to maintain in order for you to actually set external boundaries, is that simple boundary. So you're not taken over. Because what happens when you're taken over is you get into these patterns of things like avoiding or self-depreciation or self-betrayal or substance, anything like that. And again, there's nothing wrong with this behavior. It has its time and place. But if parts of you are taking over so much, and you need to start learning how to separate that. So I don't know, Radiance, if you were able to hear anything I said, but I was just kind of talking about how to create space between the authenticity of who you are, the isness of you, the God manifest you, and the aspects of yourself, so that you can actually do some of the healing, so that now when you go to have a conscious conversation about boundaries, say with another person, you are not coming from that pendulum swing place. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right. Okay. And so I'll give some scripts around that. But I'll just tune in. I wasn't sure if you heard anything or you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, it was kind of difficult. I kept coming in and coming out. Unfortunately, I'm not sure what's happening with my internet connection right now. However, I wholeheartedly agree with what you were saying. I've heard bits and pieces of it. I heard the parts of what you were saying about, connecting with basically the authentic part of you and the God part of you. So that way you're not coming from a place of either weak boundaries or too strong of boundaries when you're having those conversations with people that about maybe their boundaries or, vice versa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it. And I wanted to kind of actually give some tangible scripts, because the internal, like setting those internal boundaries, that's a really big discussion. So I'm not necessarily doing it like a hell of a lot of justice, like just kind of giving you the bare bones. But just know, again, I will be talking more about this either in my written content or my lives, because it's a really big one. But for when you are having those conversations with the relationships around you where you need to set a boundary because you're noticing it's important. Here are some really simple scripts. They're so simple, and they're not even scripts. They're just ways to start the conversation. The first thing you need to do, first of all, with the person that you're about to have that conversation with, as much and often as you can, you need to actually check in with yourself first. That's a non-negotiable. Am I coordinated? Am I self-led right now? Am I in reaction? Am I calmed? And just like Radiant said, check your body. Your body will tell you. How's your heartbeat? Can you breathe? Are you breathing just a natural in and out? Checkpoints. If you're not, then do that first. Second thing you're going to do is you're going to actually ask the person if they're available.
Yes.
Are you available right now? I need to share some things. They're either going to say yes or no. And if they say no, then all you need to do is say, great, when do you think you'll be available? Rather than leaving it open-ended. The second thing you're going to do at this point is you're going to create a boundary of the container that you need between yourself and them. And so you're going to be very direct and very clear. And I know this is going to feel weird and wobbly at first, but trust me, it works. Is you're going to just really tell them what you need, which could look like, there's a few things I need to get off my chest, and all I need you to do is listen. Or maybe you need them to listen and help problem solve, or maybe you need them to listen and reflect it back to you, but get clear on what you need. Again, this is all boundaries within yourself. Okay. And so when you don't have parts trying to take over, we're so hurt. Tell them how much they hurt us. Tell them how bad they are. You got to clear that part away, because that part is not going to help you. It has a valuable information, not going to help you. So that's what you're going to do. Check yourself. Are you ready? Okay, here's what I need, that kind of thing. And then you're just going to do simple things of always using I statements, taking responsibility, and a couple things you can lead with. I notice that. I notice that I'm willing to, I'm not willing to, I'm open to, I'm not open to, I notice, I feel, I notice I'm needing. And then the last one, and I'll say those again in a second. The last one is, I think if you've seen Brene Brown, she talked about this. This isn't hers. This has kind of like been around for a while, but the story that I'm telling myself is, and then you're just going to share. When you come from that place of communicating, now you can start establishing like co-created boundaries. And those are what are called agreements. Without those, between yourself and others, you're just going to maybe hit each other, nail on the head. Maybe you'll miss each other. Maybe you'll bang into each other. But without agreements, how do we know what to do? And so boundaries are like that. Boundaries are like that. Yeah. So just quickly again, I notice that. I notice, I feel, I'm willing to, I'm not willing to, I'm open to, I'm not open to. The story I'm telling myself is.
Yes. Not right now, sweetheart. You're gonna have to get it yourself when you're done, okay? Sorry. So
okay.
I wanted to add on to what you're saying, because I really enjoyed the way that you were able to distinguish between, are you available? When can we talk about this? Can you reflect this back to me?
Yeah.
One of the things that I feel is really important too is when you're having conversations to make sure it's solution oriented. If we're talking so much about, it's great to point out the problem that's needed, but there has to be, okay, so where do we go from here? It can be very addictive to focus so much on the problem, because, you know, that energy is addictive just as much as creating the agreement can eventually be addictive, but we have to get to that point energetically as well.
Yeah.
So making sure that that part is not given as much credence as, where do we go from here? What's the solution? Can we hold space for the solution and continue to maintain that boundary of us having these types of conversations where it's more, okay, I agree, you agree, we're here together. And it's not one person agreeing on something that someone really doesn't really understand what they're doing too. Because that can be, you know, like in a contract, you know, when someone doesn't really understand what the contract says or what the parameters of the contract is, you know, it's easy to cause conflict from there too. So just making sure that that's very clear with that agreement that you guys established too.
Yeah. And I think that's how boundaries, sorry. This is like the
Bless
cough
you.
that never ends.
Mm.
This is the one my kids had last week. That's how you maintain boundaries, is like through ongoing negotiation and agreements. And at first it's like, I mean, at least for me, I was like, well, isn't it obvious? Like, isn't it obvious this is what we need? Like, isn't that obvious?
Right.
Isn't the world revolve around my own thoughts, beliefs, and like lens at the world? And like, hell no, it doesn't. Like, there's things that I don't even think about that, you know, my partner might, or what have you, right? And again, I'm talking about this in the context of like, say, between you and your partner, but this is like applicable to every relationship, the relationship with you have with your clients. That's why just basic stuff, if you're an entrepreneur and you're watching this and you don't have a way to communicate how people can get the most out of your work together, like that's something that you need to have in place. Like that's like a way for them to get the value, right? And that's not so much about boundaries as much as it is about clear communication. But what's the difference between clear communication and a boundary? Not much, right?
Yeah.
Like there isn't. That's what. So when you're talking about boundaries, like, get really honest with yourself. What are you really saying? What are you really talking about? Like, because sometimes I'll hear about the way people are talking about boundaries, and to me, the way that I interpret it, which could totally be wrong, is that there's core wounding that they're walking around, and boundaries for them are just a way to protect their little inner child that might get hurt out in the world. And that's really a limited use of boundaries, a really limited use.
Wow. That kind of hit me a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, totally. It really did. I was like, oh, wow. You know, because I feel like, you know, in the beginning of my spiritual journey, like, you know, when you're starting to finally realize like, hey, there's like a lot of protection that I'm going to need, it kind of comes across as like, wow. And it is a limited use of boundaries. Absolutely. Because there can be so much healing that can happen with boundaries. And I feel like when you're only in the, I have to protect myself mode, that it kind of, it can prevent healing. If you're always in the mode of, I have, like, it can prevent actual forward movement. So that really hit me when you said that.
Yeah, it prevents you from using your energy, your output of expression, because you're just like on, like, I don't know, you use the word, it's not like a clenching, but you're just kind of
the contracting
all the time.
Yeah.
Right. Like boundaries, like even just talking about them help you to exhale. And it's a practice. Like even this morning, I was in a practice around some things that I had, like, you have to take responsibility too, with like, how did I create this? Right. And I like first led my conversation off, and without like airing any of like our personal laundry out into the world, because I want to honor agreements between my partner and I, I'll speak very vaguely, but it's like, I just had to open the conversation with recognizing, hey, I've noticed that I've withheld a lot of things in the last like 6 days. And I just want to share them. And, you know, I did skip a few steps of like, I checked myself, but I didn't ask if he was available. I just kind of went into it. But we're at the point right now that if he's not available, he'll openly say it. And then I will either react to that, which I maybe I'll do that, or I'll just consciously be like, okay, can we talk about it tonight when the kids go to bed? Like, you know, it's a practice, and the more you do it, the better you get at it. But also, there's something I did want to share, and it's kind of personal, but I'll share it like in a way that you can get something out of it. When Radiance, when you were kind of in and out offline there for a second, I was like talking about the internal boundary between the self, like having space between who you are and a part, so that it's not going to flood your system and take you over. So I had a chance to really set a boundary with a part that I have yesterday. And this is a part that it showed up as like this kind of green blob that was neither heavy nor light. It just was. And it held lots of parts inside of itself that were so determined, like, we have to get it right. We cannot mess this up. We have to get it right. And it had a lot of feelings. And I had to create a separation where it didn't communicate to me just through sensation, just through feeling. Because I've let it do that before. And what happens is I go numb, like my whole body goes numb. I can't feel anything. My hands like go into this claw thing. I can't see anything.
Yeah.
And I could have let it do that, right? I could have let it take over. The thing is that I've already done that. I've let me feel everything to try and help it so that I can get it, but I don't have to do that over and over and over. Like I don't have to let something take me over in order for me to get it. So my invitation, like as a tangible for you, is like, you know, you don't have to back yourself into a corner before you set boundaries. You don't have to know your boundaries just because they keep getting broken.
Right.
Like I want to make this like a tangible takeaway. Anyways, I'm talking a lot. I just had a coffee, blah, 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 blah. Talk to me, Radiance. Tell me all the things.
It's okay.
Lock it in. I have a part that was like, shut up now. You've said it all over and over.
No, but it was really great because I'm to be back into a corner until they finally get to that point where they express themselves. That's what I was talking about earlier. And for you, it doesn't sound like a projected form of anger. It sounds more like an internal type of response. And that's something that needs some talking about too. I mean, how many times does it take for us to kind of be back into a corner, or to for us to be tired of hiding, and in order for us to finally express ourselves in a healthy way. But for you, it sounds like internally, because it wasn't coming out like, rah, it was like affecting your body and affecting your nervous system and affecting your ability to actually healthily move and interact with the world. So, you know, that's actually quite interesting to me, because I wonder, like, what else has happened for your body to have that type of response? Like maybe, you know, what else internally for your ancestors for that to be your response, for you to kind of like clinch like that, you know?
Yeah. I have a part of me that's tried to like figure it out.
Yeah.
Right. And every time I go to do that, my guides will come in and they'll show me somebody trying to pull a root up. And in a chuckling, laughing way, every root's connected to another root. There's no end to it. You're trying to find this single point that doesn't exist. And that finding the answer isn't the answer. There is no, in this case, there's no root cause. It just is. And that's like, yeah. So that's why I do believe there's a root cause to things. And I also don't. And that's the same thing with boundaries. It's like, it's not a duality thing. It's an also and thing. Right. Like that's where, when you have that open to all of it. You're not trying to figure it out. You're not trying to nail something down. Rather, you're just establishing a way to be with something. It's a bit different. And I know that's very meta, but yeah, I've had to set kind of a boundary in that sense around how I want to look at my own healing.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm.
I don't want it to be
Interesting.
searching more than
Yeah.
accepting.
Yes. And when you said that, that actually brought up something, because I was reading audible, not reading, but listening
Yeah.
to family constellations. And he was saying that when he was like searching for ways to figure out why he was going blind, and he didn't understand why. And the doctors couldn't give him an explanation. And he kept going to going to Eastern practices, and he'd do all of these different things, whether it be, meditating for 8 days straight and only being able to use the restroom with a blindfold because you still wanted to be alone with your thoughts, and just eating a bowl of rice. And, he did a lot of things to really go deep. And one of the things that he said was that one of the yogis said he doesn't want you to be a searcher. He wants you to be a finder.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is that you just want to find whatever solution that works instead of always having to search for the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So absolutely, I get that.
Yeah, I think we all have parts that want to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I mean, that's just something that manages you from day to day, unless you have, again, that healthy separation, again, that boundary with like, when is it appropriate to figure something out and when is it not? Is it appropriate when you're, having this like ecstatic love making with your partner to figure out how to climax? Like, is that an appropriate place for your figuring it out part to come in and be like, okay, well, first do this, then like, no, like climaxing happens because you fucking let go. So like, maybe that's not an appropriate place for it. Right. And so just kind of creating these boundaries of like, what aspect of myself is most helpful right now? And maybe what's another one that's not, this isn't really the place for it. It's like, there's a time and place for everything.
Right. So I think I gave talking about the body as one of the ways to really be attuned and understanding your boundaries. Also making sure that we talked about this a little bit with the threshold and understanding the anger, and making sure that you can take a healthy approach to boundaries and not having what was the word that I used?
Overcompensate.
Where you're overcompensating, where you're overprotecting yourself, because that can also be a form of weakness too. If someone sees that, hey, I'm always putting a boundary, this person is always putting a boundary around them, it's like, okay, well, it's not because you're coming from a place of power, you're coming from a place of, I feel weak and I see that you're stronger and I want to make sure that you don't come close to me. So that can also be a way of someone really disempowering you and seeing that, hey, you're not really standing in a position of authority, you're standing in a position of fear. Another thing I wanted to talk about a little bit, and you touched on it a little bit as well, I think we did really, but that understanding too that your body really needs to recalibrate back to a position of feeling comfortable, feeling empowered, but also your energy and your nervous system have to feel safe in doing so. So really being in touch with your nervous system. And it doesn't really have to take, like, yes, breathing is absolutely important. And yes, there's different healing modalities and there's things that you can do from an ancestral perspective, but it's also about really reverse engineering what your triggers are. And understanding your bodily responses to those triggers and how certain instincts are there to protect us, but also there for you to be aware of why those are happening to you in the first place, which is, I think we already touched on as well. With your scripts too, I wanted to say something, but it was more in regards to, and I think I already said this, I think we touched on everything really. I think at this point we're just talking. But yeah, I really do, because I know we talked about it. But one of the things that I wanted to share because, you know, it's something that I notice I do even, you know, with my kids or just by myself. And I'm finally getting to the point where I feel like this part of me is, you know, I feel like I'm not always like, no one's completely healed, but you get to a point where you're like at least more aware. Is really just expressing yourself in a loving and healthy way. And having that be respected with whoever you're talking to. Because I noticed myself the other day, my daughter, she had like an emotionally charged response, but then she was telling me her boundary and telling my other daughter her boundary. So I feel like it's also being able to listen to what people are saying in a way that they're saying it. Sometimes they're not always expressing it in the way that really feels good for your body, and then you get triggered and then it becomes this ping pong of triggers back and forth. But really just paying attention, like, okay, is this person trying to hurt me, or are they trying to express to me what makes them feel safe? So there has to be a point where you can actually not necessarily fine tune your ears, but just extract what they're saying in a way that it's like, okay, I'm getting to the solution again, which once again I feel like we already talked about.
But I think it's important, like, and maybe this will just sort of round it off here, is like, when you're having these conversations, let's say you're setting boundaries with your children, right? Which are no different than setting boundaries with anybody else, but with children, there's like a different level of maturity. There's a different level of understanding, right? It's neither good nor bad. It's neither behind nor ahead. It's just a different way to articulate it. In that they feel their feelings probably actually in a much precise way, more precise than say adults do, because now we're like, oh, I don't even, like, we're more muddled. Whereas for them, it's pretty clear. Where they may lack is a language for it. And that's just like, literally, they haven't learned the words yet. And so part of setting boundaries with kids is part holding space and part teaching. But for you to teach them means you need to have done the work. Right. And then we're all responsible for that as parents, and we're learning more and more. And that's why a lot of people come to the work, because they want to be like a better person, which means a better mom for their kids. Right. So there's like, that's breaking generational tie, like that's breaking old patterns of generational ways of being and doing things and pain. But honestly, it's a lot of it's teaching and just being like, it sounds like you're feeling this. Just kind of like feeling this, and it usually your body does this and it makes you want to do this, and they'll either agree or disagree. But when you're setting boundaries, like for what you expect from them, it's important that you teach them like the words of emotional literacy. Like most kids don't learn. They learn happy, sad, angry, mad. But you and I both know there's so much more to it than that. And so I think when it comes to boundaries, it's learning yourself, but then part of it is like teaching others how to treat you in that.
Right. Absolutely. I love that you said that too, emotional literacy, because there's just so many different ways of expressing yourself. And there's like this one movie, I forget what it was, but it was like all these like different happy, sad, mad, and all these
the
different
Pixar
emotions.
Movie. Yeah.
And my kids watch that, but
so good. Inside Out.
It's really limited. Yeah, there you go. But it's really limited to that a lot with the kids, like those types of emotions. And it's like, really, they're trying to say something, but it's coming out maybe frazzled. And I myself have had to take the time to say, okay, what is this person, my child, obviously, but what are they really saying? You know, because before, you know, what I've been taught, it's like, you know, kids aren't even allowed to have boundaries, really. You know, it's, you know, what I say and what I do and how you feel.
Yeah. Oh no, we lost Radiance again. But I think what she's getting at is like, you don't have any, nobody's advocating for you. You don't really have any say in how things go. Right. So let's leave it at that. I think we've lost Radiance, but we haven't lost her. She's probably watching, but we're going to tune out for now. We're going to tune off for now, jump off for now, but I'll be talking a hell of a lot more about boundaries this week and all the love. See you soon.